speaker. Louis Nagel, he Professor Emeritus at the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance. Most recently seen on Sunday, in case some of you were there, and I think some of you were, for the Amadeus production, and I think he'll talk a little bit about that. But it's always fun to hear Louis talk about piano playing, piano teaching, and all things piano. Louis.
That's what happened on Sunday. After sitting for about 40 minutes, I had those 6 measures to play. It's the hardest damn thing I've ever had to do. I wasn't going to come out and talk about that, and then I asked Elena if I didn't know how many of you might be at the show. It was sold out. Not because of me. Somebody named Mozart, I think, preempted me. But I thought I would talk a little because in the 2 or 3 days that have since that volcano erupted, I have been asked many times what actually went on. And I thought you might be interested, and that is illustrative of what happened. Those of you who were able to see, the conductor had a monitor on his podium. I had the conductor. I could see the movie, but it's very hard to play that kind of thing. Watch the movie, watch the orchestra. I have never in my life sat behind an orchestra. I have often sat in front and been able to listen to the important cues that come from the orchestra. I have never given an orchestral cue before. So, I practiced that passage, which comes from the double concerto. In the last movement, I don't know what page, but I promise you, having played that piece, both parts, several times, that is the hardest 6 measures of music in the piece. And for some reason, the movie musician decided that that was illustrative of Mozart composing. And that was the vignette that was going on. My cue was 2 measures from the A major Symphony number 29. Thankfully, I know that symphony very, very well. So I knew what to listen for. I had little tiny bits of cue on a master score. So what actually happened was, my role was to provide examples from 4 concertos, 3 of which I've played multiple times with orchestra. In the context of the movie, that was absolutely in time at that tempo, only cleaner than I wasn't planning on doing this until about 10 minutes ago. And then stop. And then a little while later, I played, and this I think is fairly simple. We could all do that. The rest of that concerto, I think Mozart felt was the hardest one he had ever written, so thankfully we didn't have to do that. And then the larger chunk of music came a little bit later, and this was where it got very complicated. The conductor, I always got 2 bars of nothing. And so on. So we played the concerto literally up to one point where the music of Mozart actually stops. Whoever did the music for this show felt that we needed something, I don't know why, and I could not, I never saw this section, I mean I was busy watching the piano. I never saw this section of why there needed to be something that sounds a little bit like Mozart, but isn't Mozart thrown in? And that changed tempos very radically, and keeping up with that was impossible. And up to the last minute, I simply couldn't do it. So we had an extra rehearsal, and they put a click track in my ear, and I was able to hear the beats as well as follow. You know, a conductor does this. When you're playing in context, that makes sense. When you're trying to pick up a tempo out of nothing, and you see that, and then it's hard. But hearing the clicks and hearing how much space I had, so if I missed one, I knew I had a lot of space in order to get the next beat. And that helped. And then the last thing that I did, for those of you who were there, was continue playing of the outer sections of my favorite slow movement. And then it ended. And the last notes are... Ladies and gentlemen, that B flat is more beautiful than the B flat. It started the fantastic concerto the night before. That one B flat was the most beautiful note I've ever played in my life. The show, which we probably all saw, what, about 30 years ago when it came out? I bet most of you, if not all of you, saw it. Did you all see the stage? It was here with just, I don't know whether it was Murray Abraham and Tom Holtz on the stage. I don't remember. But it was done at Michigan Theater with just the two, which I thought was one of the most gripping experiences I had ever had. And I remember coming out of it and people asking me, Louis, what did you think? And I didn't answer them. I didn't have anything to say to them. I was just in my own world. The stage show, because it is so stark, there's just the conflict and coalescence between Mozart and Salieri in its raw presence. The theater, the movie, of course, makes a Hollywood production out of it, and there is an awful lot in both that have little, if anything, to do with historical documentation. But the show is fantastic, and I'm just sort of jealous that I never actually saw the movie this time. I saw much of it. But for those of you who came, I thought you might be a little bit interested in what was going on. The orchestra, need I say, the Detroit Symphony is fabulous. And Jeffrey Schindler, who conducted this and does this all over the world, is one of the... I can't praise him enough for, first of all, his excellence as a conductor, and second of all, his working with me and with other people to get this to coalesce and to become an entity rather than hoped for success. So if you were there and you saw and had a wonderful time, you were justified in having a wonderful time, because all of us on the stage had a wonderful time, even if it was stressful. So, enough of that. What I wanted to do today, I gave the title, I talked a lot of my opportunity away just now, but I gave the title, What and Why Do We Teach? And towards that end, and I hope this shows up, please, good. Our friend from WRCJ, Dave Wagner, posted, maybe some of you saw this, posted this on Facebook, and I was so impressed I asked him to send it over to me. I want to read this to you, because it is more eloquent than anything that I could say. The question simply is, why music? And he is addressing the teaching of it, presumably in schools, but also privately or in groups or whatever. Why music? Music is a science. Music is mathematics. Music is a foreign language. Music is history. Music is physical education. Music develops insight and demands research. Music is all of these things, but most of all, music is art. That is why we teach music. Not because we expect you to major in music. Not because we expect you to play or sing all your life, but because you will be human. I just want that line to sink in. So you will recognize beauty. So you will be closer to an infinite beyond this world. So you will have something to cling to. So you will have more love, more compassion, more gentleness, more good. In short, and he writes in capitals, life. There's no way that I could add to that. I thought that was the most beautiful statement of why we teach. And I was reminded, all of you have had the experience when you were in high school of having to read Hamlet or Macbeth or Julius Caesar or something. And we read it. And I remember we had to give a portion of Hamlet's soliloquy in front of the class. Now there were 20 some odd people in the class, so I don't think people would be taught this way today, but all of us had to get up and recite that soliloquy. And I do remember everybody saying how nervous they were, and they said to me, "Louis, you've played in front of audiences, you shouldn't be nervous." I was more scared than anybody. And I did it, and I passed, and I was told later I left out 10, we could have trouble with 10 words. I mean, it was a grocery list. I left out 10 words. It was an entire line. It was a very important line. What it proved to me much later on is that I was mouthing by rote these words. I did not understand what I was saying. Much later, understanding came when I read Hamlet again at Juilliard in a humanities class, and then I read it on my own and seen it on the stage. Then I understood. But at that point, I was filling out an assignment. So much of what we do when we teach is giving assignments. It's not bad for us to do that. So many of our students do what we tell them to do. So if we say crescendo, they crescendo. Why? Teacher said so. Or it's on the page. Hopefully that's a better reason because they're at least reading the score. But understanding comes with wisdom and comes from experience. And probably none of the students that are in this room, of teachers who are in this room now, probably are not going to go on to become concert pianists. Maybe one or two that you have that are tremendously gifted. I know such happens. But most students are studying music and in choir in high school or in band and go to music camps, not because they're going to become professional tubists or organists or clarinet players, but because of that, what I just read. It rounds out, it makes us human. And before I finish this little commentary on this, part of the lecture, it's the only lecture that I have. I don't have any formal lecture except talking spur of the moment up here. But one of the things I mentioned in my 10 Elements of Music lecture is that the human being is the only creature on earth that can sing. We can make music from inside coming out with a purpose for doing so. Birds sing, we attribute song to them. And perhaps they're calling a mate or warning about a predator. But they're not singing from Aida. They're not singing Winterreise. They're doing what instinct has wired them to do. We can sing. We can make music. And we do it whether we even are aware of it or not, with a purpose. If you walk down the street and you find yourself humming, you're actually giving yourself company. If you're in the shower, you are pretending that you are some great singer of opera until you get out of the shower. But we can make music, and we can be closer to that infinite thing that is beauty. And it's so very, very important for us to remember that. All right, from the philosophical and verging on the dime store philosophy to some actual practical things. What I plan to do is to walk out and play one of the three-part sinfonias. I think I'm going to try to do that anyway. And not because, I'm not talking about Bach today. But I am talking about teaching. And I am not going to talk about how. I will not do that. You ask me questions about it, I can comment, but we're all teachers in here, and we all have our purposes for doing what we do. But because Bach is the progenitor of all that we do, everything that we do can be traced back to the Klavierübungen kind of music that Bach wrote. So, you'll recognize this.